welcome back to the Deep Dive. I want to start today by asking you to think about the last time you felt truly stuck. And I don't mean like I can't find my key stuck. I mean that feeling where you are staring at a problem, whether it's a blank page or a broken team dynamic or a design flaw that just won't resolve, and the solution...
impossible.
Exactly. Like it literally does not exist in the universe.
That is a very specific, a very heavy kind of wall. It's usually the point where most of us give up, or we just recycle an old idea that didn't work the first time simply because we're desperate.
Right. But today, we are going to try to dismantle that wall. We have pulled together a stack of sources that is honestly one of the most eclectic mixes we have ever had on the show.
Yeah, it really is.
We're going to be talking about everything from a technical guide on architecting AI and music to the dawn of human consciousness in a South African cave. We've also got a thesis from Carnegie Mellon on the gender culture in computer science, biological research from NYU Dental School on sea urchins and vaping.
Sea urchins and vaping.
I know, stick with us. And finally, a dense philosophical collection on materialism and art.
It sounds like a complete random grab bag when you list them out like that, but there's a very specific, very strong thread tying all of this together, and that thread is structure.
The architecture of potential.
Right. The central argument across these totally disparate sources is that genius, whether it's a brilliant idea, a resilient organization, or a biological breakthrough, isn't magic.
It isn't lightning in a bottle.
No, it is an engineering problem. It is about how you structure the system to make the impossible inevitable.
Okay, so let's start with the most abstract part of this, your brain.
Okay.
We have a technical guide in the stack titled Architecting H Creativity. And the first thing it does is, kind of slaps you in the face with a distinction I hadn't really thought about before. It basically argues most of us are aiming for the wrong kind of creativity entirely.
Right. It draws on the work of a researcher named Margaret Bowden. She distinguishes between P creativity and H creativity.
P creativity stands for psychological, right?
Yeah. That is when you have an idea that is surprisingly new to you. Like if a child discovers that mixing blue and yellow makes green. That is a huge, mind-blowing moment for that child. It is P creative.
But the rest of the world already knew that. It's not news.
Exactly. It's super important for personal growth, but it doesn't change the world. The sources today are pushing us toward H creativity.
Historical creativity.
Yes. This is an idea that has literally never appeared in human history before. It modifies the entire conceptual space of humanity.
We are talking the big leagues here. Einstein, Picasso, the invention of the internet.
Yeah.
But here is the thing that usually stops people. We think H creativity is just luck. You either have the gene or you don't.
Yeah.
But this guide argues there are 3 specific roads to get there, and they're actually protocols you can follow.
This is the user manual part of the deep dive. The first road is the most common combinational creativity. This is taking 2 familiar, existing ideas and smashing them together to make something new.
Like a poetic collage. Or, honestly, let's look at the tech landscape right now.
Yeah.
This is basically what most generative AI models are doing.
Right.
They aren't thinking in a vacuum.
Right.
They are engaging massive, high-speed, combinational creativity.
Precisely. It's probability. If you mix enough data points, eventually you get a novel combination. But the second road is harder. It's exploratory creativity.
Okay.
This is where you have a defined conceptual space, say the rules of chess or the style of Baroque music, and you push to the absolute edge of those rules.
So you aren't breaking the rules, but you are finding the edge cases.
Right, you are finding the move that looks insane to a novice but is technically legal and wins the game. You are exploring the limits of the map. You aren't leaving the territory, but you're finding the caves everyone else missed.
But the third one, this is the holy grail, transformational creativity.
Yes, this is where you realize the map itself is wrong. Transformational creativity is when you don't just explore the rules, you break the rules of the conceptual space itself to make the impossible possible. The classic example the source gives is the shift from tonal music, which had ruled the West for centuries, to atonal music.
Schoenberg didn't just write a weird song. He changed the definition of what music was.
Exactly.
Okay, that sounds great in theory. Go change the definition of music. Easy for you to say.
Right.
But how does a normal person actually trigger that? Because the source gives some protocols that are pretty wild. One of them is called bridge reading.
I love this one because it is so actionable. The idea is that expertise is actually a trap. If you are a neuroscientist and you only read neuroscience papers, you will only ever have peak creativity. You're stuck in the silo. Bridge reading demands that you deliberately maintain 2 or 3 orthogonal knowledge streams.
Orthogonal meaning they run at right angles, like they don't touch.
They should have absolutely nothing to do with each other. So you read deep neuroscience, but you also read, say, architecture and, I don't know, legal theory, and you force your brain to bridge them. You ask, how does the concept of jurisdiction and law apply to how a neuron fires?
Oh, wow. It forces the brain to build a new structure to hold those two incompatible ideas. It creates a friction that sparks new thoughts.
And that strain produces the spark. Another protocol they mention is negative space mapping.
This one felt dangerous. It feels like you're actively looking for trouble.
It can be. Every field has a positive space, the things we do, the questions we ask, the best practices. Negative space mapping is where you list everything your field never does.
The taboos.
The impossible things, the research that gets laughed out of the room, and then you go there, you treat the darkness as data.
Because that is where the H creativity is hiding, in the blind spots.
Exactly. If everyone is looking at the light, the only place to find something truly new is in the dark. It's about questioning the assumptions that are so basic nobody even thinks to question them.
Now, doing this requires getting over your own internal editor, that little voice that says this is stupid or this is wrong. The source brings up some disinhibition strategies to help with this.
Yeah.
It even mentions biological hacks, like using L-tyrosine or L-dopa to prime dopamine levels, which actually increases novelty-seeking behavior.
Which is fascinating, hacking your own neurochemistry to be more open to weird ideas, essentially chemically inducing curiosity.
But my favorite was the constraint annihilation protocol. It's basically a highly structured brain dump. The rule is quality is turned off entirely. Absurdity is required. You have to produce, say, 100 raw fragments in an hour.
It's quantity over quality to break the filter. It's statistically inevitable genius. If you produce enough noise and you are truly uninhibited, eventually you will generate a signal that breaks the paradigm.
Right.
But you cannot get there if you are editing yourself in real time. You have to separate the generation phase from the evaluation phase. If you try to do both at once, you freeze.
So we have this intense engineering approach to the individual brain, but let's zoom out, way out.
Okay?
Because this ability to create new symbols and ideas, it had to start somewhere. And for a long time, the story was that this software came online in Europe, right?
Yes, the European explosion myth. The old academic narrative was that modern human thought art, complex symbolism, the soul of humanity popped up in Ice Age Europe about 40,000 years ago. Think of the Lascaux cave paintings.
Right.
The idea was that before that, we were just clever animals.
But our deep history source from the American Museum of Natural History says we need to look much further south and much further back in time.
We are going to Blombos Cave in South Africa, right on the southern coast. Archaeologists there found layers dating back 72,000 to 100,000 years.
Wow.
And inside, they found something that looks incredibly simple but changed everything. Tiny snail shells. Serious Crassianus.
And to be clear, these weren't just leftovers from a seafood dinner.
No, they were beads. They were deliberately pierced with bone tools. They had wear patterns showing they had been strung together and worn against skin or cloth for long periods. Some even had traces of red ochre on them.
Red ochre is that soft stone pigment, right?
Yes. And they found chunks of that too, engraved with geometric crosshatch patterns. Now, you might ask, why does a bead matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's just jewelry. It's fashion.
It is much more than jewelry. A bead is external storage of meaning.
Whoa. Let's unpack that.
Think about it. An animal doesn't wear a symbol. A bead says, this object represents me or my tribe or my status. It is the first hard evidence of symbolic thought.
Okay.
It is humans detaching meaning from the physical world and storing it in a symbol.
It's the first hard drive.
In a way, yes. It proves that the software for modern humanity, the capacity for H creativity, for abstract thought, was running in Africa tens of thousands of years before anyone set foot in Europe. We were modern before we migrated. We carried that capacity for symbolic structure with us.
It completely overturns the entire Eurocentric timeline of human evolution.
Exactly. So we have the individual brain hacking its way to genius, and we have the species unlocking symbolic thought. But most of us don't work alone. We work in teams, in companies, in universities. How do we structure a group to be creative?
This brings us to a really fascinating thesis from Carnegie Mellon University regarding women in computer science.
This was a huge eye-opener for me. It tackles what the source calls the geek mythology. We all know the stereotype, right? Men dream in code, they are obsessed with the machine itself, while women only want computing with a purpose.
Right, they only care about the application, like helping people or medicine.
Exactly.
That is, the men are from Mars, women are from Venus version of tech. It implies a biological difference in interest. The source argues it suggests the pipeline is broken because women just aren't interested in the hard stuff, but the data they collected at CMU blew that apart.
How so?
When they interviewed students, they found a total spectrum across both genders. There were men who only cared about social applications and women who loved the low-level coding and hacking. So if the interest was there for both, why were the numbers of women in CS so low? Why was the pipeline leaking?
The source highlights it wasn't about gender ability or even interest at all. It was about culture. The environment itself was structured to repel anyone who didn't fit the boy genius stereotype.
And this is where the intervention they study, women at SCS, comes in. And what I found so interesting is what they didn't do. They didn't try to change the curriculum to make it, like, pink.
Right.
They didn't try to fix the women or give them remedial classes.
No, they fixed the environment. They created a balanced environment with mentoring, leadership councils, and crucially, they changed the imagery around the department. They treated the female students as leaders, not as a minority group that needed help. When the environment changed to fit the students rather than forcing students to fit a narrow stereotype, women's success and retention skyrocketed. It reframed the whole pipeline problem as a culture problem.
There is a theoretical framework in our stack that explains why this worked. It's a bit dense, but it's called the Viable System Model, or VSM, by organizational theorist Stafford Beer.
VSM is a heavy hitter in management theory, but we can simplify it. It essentially asks, how does an organization survive in a chaotic, changing world? Beer argues you need a constant balance between two things, autonomy and cohesion.
Autonomy meaning the parts can do their own thing.
Exactly. That is System 1. In a university, System 1 is the students, the researchers, the individual departments. They need to be autonomous, to be responsive and creative. If the dean has to approve every single line of code, the system dies. It's too slow.
But if they are too autonomous, it's just anarchy. You need cohesion.
And that brings us to System 5.
Which sounds like a secret police unit.
It does, but in VSM, System 5 is policy or ethos. It is the part of the system that defines who we are. It sets the identity. It's the ultimate feedback loop. Every level of a viable system has to have this recursive structure.
So connecting this back to the Carnegie Mellon example.
The women at SCS Council effectively acted as a feedback loop that altered System 5. It changed the ethos of the department from computer science is for boy geniuses to computer science is for everyone with a passion.
And by changing System 5 the identity, it allowed System 1 the students to actually thrive and function.
Precisely. They fixed the structure and the potential followed. You can't just yell at the parts to work better, you have to design the system to support them. If the ethos, System 5, is hostile to the autonomous parts, System 1, the system fails.
Speaking of designing systems to support the parts, let's get physical. We're going to the NYU Dental School source.
Okay.
And I promise this connects perfectly. We are talking about sea urchins.
Nature is the ultimate structural engineer. The source discusses sea urchins' spicules, or spines. Now think about what a spine is. It's a defense mechanism. It needs to be tough. But sea urchin spines are made of calcium carbonate.
Which is basically chalk.
Yeah.
Chalk is brittle, it snaps. If I built a spear out of chalk, it would be entirely useless.
Exactly. So how does the sea urchin survive the crashing waves and predators of the ocean with armor made of chalk? It is a structural trick. The biological research explains they use a specific protein, RSPSM50, to organize the chalk.
It doesn't just mix the protein in like glue.
No, it uses the protein to stack the chalk into tiny microscopic bricks. It creates a literal brick and mortar structure on a cellular level.
So it's masonry.
It is combinational creativity in biology. Protein plus chalk equals supermaterial. The resulting spine is incredibly fracture resistant, not because the material changed, it's still just chalk, but because the organization of the material changed.
Oh, wow. And that same NYU source also touched on the flip side of this. What happens when the structure gets disrupted? They were talking about vaping.
A sobering reminder. The marketing for e-cigarettes often claims they are safe or clean, but the research on the oral microbiome suggests otherwise. The aerosol disrupts the bacterial environment.
External input that causes chaos.
It alters the community structure of the bacteria, which can lead to inflammation and disease. It's the exact opposite of the sea urchin. The urchin uses structure to create strength, while the vaping disrupts structure to create vulnerability.
And briefly, there was also a mention of frogs in that source, right?
Yes, Xenopus latus. Researchers were studying the SF3B4 gene. A mutation there causes craniofacial defects like teenager syndrome. It's another profound example where a tiny structural change in the code, the gene, leads to a massive structural failure in the output, the face.
It seems like everywhere we look in this stack, we see the exact same thing. You can't just look at the surface, you have to look at the underlying architecture. Which leads us to our final and probably most brain-bending source thinking art.
This is where we get philosophical, but stick with us because it ties everything together beautifully. The source introduces a concept called arting.
Arting, as a verb.
Yes. The argument is that art is usually treated as a noun, an object you put in a museum, a finished product, a painting, a sculpture. But arting is a process. It is a process of futurity. It is about creating something that doesn't exist yet, probing the unreal.
It reminds me of that transformational creativity from the beginning, breaking the conceptual space.
It is very similar, but this source adds a sharp critique of how we live now. It talks about digital capitalism and critiques new materialism. The source argues we have this fetish for the clean digital world.
The sleek iPhone, the glass Apple Store, the cloud, everything is smooth, seamless, and visible.
Exactly, less is more. But the author argues this cleanliness is an illusion. It relies on massive amounts of invisible labor.
There's a specific example of this that really stuck with me. The video work by an artist named Sanjay Ivekovich. It was filmed at the Urchin campus bank.
Right, a pristine glass-fronted building, a literal temple of modern capitalism. But the video focuses entirely on the night cleaners. Women, often completely invisible to the day workers who are scrubbing the glass, erasing the dirt.
The source describes the camera following them. The sheer physical effort it takes to maintain the illusion that the building is effortless.
And this connects right back to our negative space mapping from the very first segment.
How so?
Well, if you only look at the shiny, finished product, the art or the iPhone or the genius idea, you are missing reality. Real creativity involves looking at the invisible parts. You have to see the cleaners. You have to see the bad ideas and the brain dump that led to the good ones.
That is a powerful thought. The clean version is a lie. The potential is in the mess.
The potential is in the whole structure, the visible and the invisible. If you try to design a system that is only shiny and clean, it will fail. It lacks the negative space required to be real.
So let's try to wrap our heads around all of this. We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with dopamine hacks to trick our brains into age creativity.
We saw the first spark of that creativity in shell beads in South Africa tens of thousands of years ago, the moment we decided to store meaning outside our bodies, creating the first symbols.
We looked at how changing the Ecosystem 5 at Carnegie Mellon revolutionized the culture for women in computer science, proving that culture is an engineering problem.
We saw sea urchins stacking chalk bricks to survive the ocean, proving that structure beats raw material every time.
And we ended with the philosophical idea that arting is a verb that requires us to see the invisible labor behind the shiny facade.
The takeaway for me is this potential isn't magic, it is structural. Whether it is a sea urchin spine or a university department, the structure determines the potential. You want a different result, you want genius or equity or resilience, you can't just wish for it, you have to design the system to support it.
You have to do the engineering. You have to be the architect.
Precisely.
So here's the thought we want to leave you with today. We talked about age creativity requiring you to break the rules of the conceptual space, to do the impossible.
So look at your own life. What is an invisible constraint you are living with? What is a rule that you think is unbreakable, like men dream in code or chalk is brittle, that is actually just a structural problem waiting to be re-engineered?
Find that rule and break it. Go art your own future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Catch you next time.